Denver Nuggets are a machine. They really are. They're a machine. I'm going to tell you why coming up on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You are Locked On Nuggets.
Yes, you are Locked On Nuggets. My name's Matt Moore. Thanks for joining us and appreciate you guys being with us here on a Sunday night. It's me solo here on a Sunday. Ryan's very ill. Ryan's super sick. And that's why I am with you here on Locked On Nuggets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Being with us, being an everydayer, if you're part of our everyday club, over at lockedonnuggets.supercast.com. Do appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for making this your first listen. We appreciate you guys spending whatever time that you do with us, especially here during the holidays. Glad to have you with us on a Sunday night. Not no jinx episode, just me tonight because Ryan is very sick. It takes a lot for Ryan to not do the show. That poor kid is always like, no, it's good. I'm good. I'll do a show no matter how beat up he looks. I'm always like, it's okay, man. Like, it'll be fine. It's all right. There's three of us. It's cool. So I'm doing the show for you tonight. And tonight's show, I want to talk about the Nuggets are a machine. And I know that like they lost on Saturday, but I don't like to do 2 days of excavation and like why they lost. If you want to know why they lost, go listen to Saturday's episode. Spoiler alert, they didn't shoot well. They didn't put the little round thing in the circle with the net attached. And nobody did that. And so they lost the game to the Houston Rockets. But in general, I actually don't think that game was something to be super concerned about. If it was a really concerning loss, I'd be like, all right, let's break this down. Here's what I noticed on the rewatch. They didn't shoot well. And I think the actual game plan, I think, is pretty solid. And I feel pretty good about the matchup for Denver on that long term. So instead, today, I want to talk a little bit about what makes the Nuggets so good this season, because I really do think maybe this is me in the bubble, right? And if you are somebody that listens and doesn't comment often, I would love to hear from you on Twitter or in the comments at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, or you can hit me up through any number of means. Join our Everydayers Club. We have text chats now, all those type of things, and let me know how you feel about the season, because I'd really like to know, because I do think that there's like certain segments that I'm exposed to that are going to be they're super fans, and I think that that's great and awesome, and we love our Everydayers. But I also do think that like there's probably a little bit here where it's like, hey, the perception might be better amongst like the general fan base. But I think that both around NBA talking circles and locally, I don't think there's an awareness of exactly how good the Nuggets are. And I want to talk a little bit about why I'm so high on Denver and what I think about it. And what does that really say about them, that they've been what they've been so far this season, with a lot of circumstances that quite honestly have not been ideal. So a lot of stuff to kind of get to. We do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. I am Matt Moore. I've been a credentialed NBA reporter for 14 seasons. Cover the Denver Nuggets. I write the Denver Dig. I write at Hardwood Paroxysm. I write at Fansided. I write at the Action Network. You can catch me at all those places. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Daily. You can catch it Monday through Friday on the youtube.com/LockedOnNBA. They are letting me know in the chat, because we're going here live. Yeah, the Kings knocked off the Rockets the very night after getting that big win in Denver. It's how it goes, man. Letdown spots are a pain. The Nuggets fell victim to it. The Nuggets beat the Rockets and then turned around and lost to the Kings. Kings have beaten the Nuggets and Rockets after playing each other, which is really funny. So that'll help in the old standings watch, as Houston will take another loss and slip back to 9 losses in the Western Conference playoff race, 2 games behind the Denver Nuggets, who lead 2-1 in the season series. Okay, so I want to talk about this. I want to talk about how I think the Nuggets are a machine. Now, the Nuggets this season, the overall record, they're 20-7 entering Monday's play versus the Utah Jazz. They got back-to-back versus Utah and Dallas. They are 2-1 in the division. They're 8-5 at home. That has not been good enough, but they are 12-2 on the road. That's fantastic. They have won as many games. They have the same record on the road as the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now the Thunder are 13-0 at home. You got to win your home games. They are 6-4 in their last 10. They have done this. They've reached this mark of 20-7, despite the fact that they have been without Aaron Gordon for a month, Christian Brown for a month, Peyton Watson has missed several games. Jamal Murray has missed a handful. And they've just generally not had great injury luck this season. That has not been something that's been necessarily terrific for them. But here's what I think is interesting when I started to look at the numbers. And I'm not going to read you a bunch of stat figures because I just don't think that that's good content. I will instead give you kind of broad strokes on what kind of backs up the idea that the Nuggets are this good, and they really are a machine this season. So when you take a step back from the games, and I think it's very easy when you watch it game by game and you're a fan and you notice all the weaknesses. My wife does this with the Avalanche. They were up 3-1 versus the Wild today in the third period, and she's like stressing out. She's like, this third period has not been good. And I'm like looking up, and I'm like, they're still up 3-1. Like they haven't scored again. Like you still have a 2-goal lead. This is like one of the best teams in hockey. What do you do? And she was just worried, and she was worried until they scored the insurance goal to go up 4-1. I think it's easy to kind of nitpick when you follow the team every day, especially when you have expectations. It puts a lot of stress, I think, because you're constantly just like this. And I do want to talk about kind of why you have to have that standard of never being satisfied from a team standpoint, but not from a fan standpoint. We'll talk about that in the second segment. Denver this season has shot the lights out. They are number 1 in effective field goal percentage. They shoot better than anybody else in the league. That's mostly Jokic. But their three-point shooting has also been good. And Jamal's been terrific, and that really boosts you. When your two biggest volume players are shooting terrific, near career highs, it's going to be pretty good for your overall efficiency. But they are the number 1 shooting team. It's the most important factor. There are these numbers that kind of indicate how good you are. And they are backed by years and years and years, over decades of performance. And you'll hear this phrase called the 4 factors used. And if you're not familiar with it, if you are, forgive me, bear with me for a second. The idea is that effective field goal percentage is most highly correlated with winning. Like you make the shots, the other team doesn't make the shots, you're likely to win. See Saturday's game versus the Rockets. The second most likely, highest tied to it is actually offensive rebounding. That's been the second most highly correlated number in recent years in relation to winning. Denver's 18th in offensive rebounding. They don't rebound a lot of their own shots because they make a bunch of them. But we'll get to the defensive side in a second. However, Denver is 3rd in turnover rate, which is the 3rd most important one. They have the 3rd lowest turnover rate this season. They just don't turn the ball over, which is a crazy transformation for this team, and it's a reason why they are such a machine offensively. And they're 7th in free throw rate. So think about this. Denver scores at they make their shots at an extremely high rate. They also generate fouls at a really high rate. So if they're not making shots, they're probably getting fouled. And they don't turn the ball over. That's how you become this offense that I talk about, where they are so loaded, where they are an absolute machine that goes on these runs, because they do hit you with made buckets and they do get to the line and they don't turn the ball over. Got a comment, Matt, with the game changing so much, which stats are louder and which ones are less important? It used to be turnovers were the second most important one. That used to be the second most important one. But what you've seen is in this pace and space era, you can be a high turnover team and still be pretty good. You can still be very good. The Warriors were always a high turnover rate team when they went on their run. Now, I do think we're entering an era where turnover rates actually going back the other way. When you look at some of the best teams in the league right now, when you look at at the Oklahoma City Thunder, extremely low turnover rate, number 1 in the league offensively. They don't turn the ball over, they turn you over. They are number 1 on offense and defense. So it's just, we have more possessions. And as long as you have more possessions and score efficiently, you're going to win. So that's, I think, swinging back the other way, but that used to be a much bigger factor. Free throw rates going down because of the amount of threes. That's become less and less. Like, honestly, it's more of a 3 factor, where it's like a lot of the teams that are really great in free throw rate are not necessarily what you would consider dynamos like that you would have in the 90s and the 2000s and even early 2010s. The Lakers lead the league in free throw rate. Big surprise. The Lakers lead the league in free throw rate. But Orlando's number 2, and they don't have an elite offense. They're 12th currently via cleaning the glass and non-garbage time. Utah is 3rd, and they're 18th. And then the Blazers are 4th, and they're 20th. It just doesn't necessarily translate to efficiency. But if you don't turn the ball over and you can shoot like the Nuggets can, then you're a weapon. You are just this machine that they're able to crank through things. Now, I think everyone here knows that the offense, everyone listening knows the offense is awesome, right? Take a look at the defensive side. Okay, because they're 15th in opponent effective field goal percentage, and that's the weak point that you want to improve. That's where you really got to get better. Is you need to get your opponent shooting rate down, and a lot of that is based off of these corner threes that they allow, which are purposeful in a lot of instances. They've just got to get a little bit better in their execution of them. If they execute a little bit better on their closeouts, and that should be the goal over the back half of the year, that's something you can work on. If everything else is stable with your team, you get to work on these little things. You don't have to be like, man, we really got to put a lot of work into just scoring or just getting a stop. You can work on these little things. Denver's 17th in defense non-garbage time via cleaning the glass. And that's not good enough, but it's also not horrible. They're not a bottom 5 defensive team, and they're not a bottom 10 defensive team. They're right around where they were the year that they won the title. And I do think that there's so much room for improvement with them based off of the guys that they've had missing, because their defense was terrific when they had AG and Christian. And there are trickle-down effects throughout the roster when you take those guys out. Denver's 29th in opponent turnover rate, right? So that's like the big one. If turnover rate's becoming more important, you're not attacking this really important thing. But I just kind of think that the more important thing is your own turnover rate rather than opponent. I don't necessarily find that you need to be able to force turnovers in order to be an elite defense. Now, the numbers are better for all these teams in terms of you do that. So like the teams that are the top 5 teams in opponent turnover rate, they are all top 12 defenses this season. But you do have some exceptions as you get further down the list. The Cavs are really good at forcing turnovers. They're 13th in defense. The Hawks are really good at forcing turnovers. They're 18th in defense. The Blazers are really good at forcing turnovers. They're 19th in defense. So it's not necessarily this kind of secret. That is a weakness for Denver, but I don't know how Denver can really improve in the turnover department. Like, I don't know how they are going to force more turnovers other than like playing harder and digging down and making more risky plays. And the more risks you take, the more you leave yourself open to vulnerabilities. That is, I think, a problem with how their roster is built. You don't want Jamal Murray gambling on steals. I don't want Spencer Jones gambling on steals. I don't want Peyton Watson gambling on steals. You want solid rotational defense. Just win the possession game, and Denver is so consistent, they will be able to win. And then finally, just kind of wrap up this segment, their second in opponent offensive rebound rate. I mentioned they don't grade a lot of offensive rebounds, but they don't allow you to either. And they're 8th in opponent free throw rate. Madelman's complained about that, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about what all these numbers mean and why this matters as far as the overall profile of what Denver's put together for being able to carry this forward into the next half of the season and whether they should be satisfied or not. We'll talk about that coming up on Locked On Nuggets. Nobody knows your money better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, and beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Folks in the chat are just all reacting to the Rockets losing to the Kings. I'm glad this is turning into a rivalry. The Nuggets could use another rival outside of OKC and Minnesota. So, like, glad to see that Nuggets fans are very much ready to initiate this. Okay. So I gave you all these kind of figures on where they stand league wide on these numbers. And the profile is they don't turn the ball over, they score efficiently. They don't turn you over, but they don't allow you extra possessions, and they don't give up fouls. That's kind of the model. If they can just scrape off a little bit in terms of how they contest shots and force a little bit lower percentage, they're going to be in position to have a top 15 defense with this offense, and that is more than good enough to win the title. Like, that's honestly like a really good goal. Is you're 17th, get yourself top 15, move into 14th, 13th, 12th. You move into that range, and you're going to be there. This season, without Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon, in games where neither of them have played, the Nuggets are 9-4. They are 69% this season when those two do not play. That's phenomenal. That's 2 starters that you're down. That's a lot of money that you are down with Aaron Gordon's contract. Christian starts next year. They have wins in that stretch over the Grizzlies, the Suns, the Hawks, the Rockets, and the Magic. They have losses to the Rockets, the Kings, in that game I mentioned earlier, the Spurs, that was a tough game, and the Mavericks. The Mavericks one was probably, I think, their worst loss. But the Mavericks have actually been pretty competitive lately, although I will say I tend to not want to do that kind of analysis where it's like, hey, but that team's not bad. Well, yeah, but you're still supposed to beat them. Like, it's a team not being terrible doesn't mean that you should lose to them. Denver shouldn't have lost to Dallas. Exquisite Nugget says we lost to Chicago too. I do not have. I think Christian played that game, or Aaron did. Maybe Aaron did, because Aaron went out in the Rockets game. I think that's how it worked. Regardless, the Nuggets have really put together a season where they are just racking up wins. They have an explosive offense. We've talked about that with the runs that they're able to put together. They have the lineup versatility where you have these kind of small indicators, like how good they've been in things like when Jonas and Jamal are on the floor, or when Jonas and Cam Johnson are on the floor. Like, those little indicators, I think, are actually really important. As an example, this season, they've only played 48 minutes together. When Cam Johnson, Jamal Murray, and Jonas Valanciunas play together, this team has a plus 30 net rating in the only 48 minutes they've gotten to that lineup. It's phenomenal. They have lineup versatility, which means more solutions to problems that are presented to you. And they've done all this without their 2 most important defenders and 2 really crucial parts of their team. And it's proof of concept, where the Nuggets as a whole are great. I am not removing Jokic from that. He is the engine. He is the reason. He is the machine. He is all praise to Jokic. I am saying, though, that around Nikola, the team has played to a level where you're able to feel pretty confident. The margins here are really terrific. Like, they are winning a lot of these margin situations in very good ways. They're not getting killed on offensive rebounds and putbacks, which means that they're not just lazy and not rebounding. They're not getting out hustled on the offensive glass. They are not playing sloppy and turning the ball over. They're not just like whipping around and trying to make something happen and not playing with precision. They are not giving up a lot of fouls and getting in foul trouble. Jokic obviously had some issues. There are all these kind of things. The reason I kind of talk about all this is this puts you in a really good position to be able to carry it forward, to be able to take this and work on the stuff that you need to do over the next 2 months. You're going to get Christian and Aaron back here in the next couple of weeks. I'm running out of hope that they're going to be back for Christmas. I was hopeful that they would be back for the Christmas game versus the Wolves, but it looks like they're going to be shorthanded again. But they'll get those guys back after the beginning of the year. You burst through January. The last 2 weeks, or the first 2 weeks in February, are nonsense because everybody's checked out mentally. You head into the All-Star break. You come back refreshed. You're home for the entire month of March, and you're in really good position. Then it's April. It's playoffs. They're in a phenomenal position here. there is the risk of them falling to the 4. I'm not going to act like that's not a concern because you do have the Spurs being so good. Houston is really good, though they do keep taking losses like this. And the Lakers, I think, will probably hang around and get healthier and will be in that mix too. I do think it's very likely that Denver, when you kind of look across the board at the entire big picture assessment of these teams, it's, I think, difficult not to come to the conclusion that Denver is the second best team in the Western Conference. I just don't know how you can really make an argument otherwise. Houston has a better net rating, schedule adjusted. They have a better net rating, but Denver has shown that they can beat Houston. So even if Houston winds up in the 2, I've said I don't really worry about their ability to go on the road and beat Houston in a game 5, game 7 environment. I think Houston's really good, but given where Denver has gotten to and how good their offense is, their best stuff, I think, is better than Houston's best stuff. There's a big gap between them defensively, but I do think that they're in position to do that. A lot of this is going to have to be managing the difference between being a machine and just cranking out these wins and being satisfied. I think the Kings Bulls stretch was probably indicative to them. They were mad about those games. Like, they really were. They had the right approach. I do pay attention to how teams respond to certain losses. And like the Nuggets lost to the Rockets and it was like, well, that sucked. And that's pretty much it. And they lost to the Kings and Bulls and they were mad at themselves, which is what they should do. Is you should be focused on, we'll figure out how to beat these great teams when we get there. Because you could talk about like, no, you've got to be able to beat them now. Except it's 4 months from now. They're going to look different in 4 months. You're going to look different in 4 months. You won't be the same. You will just not be. Little things will be different. Guys will be playing better. Guys will be playing worse. So I do think that for the Nuggets, the key is to not be satisfied with just staying above water. There's a tricky kind of part of this, which is I ran into this last year. Every night was so tough that it was like, we can't really work on improving. We can't have goals. We're just trying to survive. And they did. They won 50 games, and yet it still felt like it was just a nightmare slog every single night. And they have to figure out a way to get past that to where it's like, all right, we know we're going to beat the Wizards. We know we're going to beat the Bulls, right? We know we're going to beat the Jazz. Like, the game on Monday versus the Jazz is actually a pretty good one. They should beat that team by double digits. It should be easy. It may not be. Maybe the Jazz have nights where they play really well. They might keep this game competitive, but Denver needs to win the game. Margin doesn't matter. They need to win the game, and it needs to feel like, yeah, they were always going to kind of win that game. It needs to not be like a scrape and claw. It needs to be like, yeah, I mean, we didn't play as well as we wanted to, but we weren't going to lose that game. And that takes you into the last section of the year, and that will set you up very well. Coming up, I'll talk about what's the week ahead looks like for the Nuggets this Christmas week, the matchup with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and more coming up on Locked On Nuggets. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines are adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Still the number 1 seed in the AFC. No one needs to be concerned. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. So, hey, look at that from Snow Wolf. They had a shoe release and put scratch tickets in the shoe boxes. I won the grand prize and got to meet Joker and AG. That's really cool, man. Congratulations. That's terrific. Yeah, you met Brendan Vogt from DM Bro. That's terrific, Snow Wolf. I'm glad that you got to have that today. Everything went great for you today. Everything. Absolutely everything. Nothing bad happened to you whatsoever in your sports life today. All right. So this week, the Nuggets face the Utah Jazz on Monday. I don't want to overlook that game, right? Because like they overlook the Kings and the Bulls and they can lose. So we'll see how they react to that. The Tuesday game with Dallas, I think, has a little bit to it. Dallas has played better as of late. They've beaten the Pistons, they've beat the Nuggets, they beat the Warriors. They were in that game versus the Sixers. So that game actually, I think, has got a little bit of juice to it. Denver needs to be able to show that it can beat Dallas and like reassert a level of control. And they're on the road where they've been so good. Then obviously the Christmas Day game versus the Wolves. So Denver's in a really good spot there to be able to go up and clinch the season series, which would be huge. Minnesota is sneaky good. Their record doesn't make them look like this absolutely awesome, incredible team. And even like tonight, they got the win over the Milwaukee Bucks, but it was a 3-point win. Like they beat the Thunder and then they struggle with the Bucks, and that's the Wolves this season and really for the last 2 seasons. But they are top 10 in both offense and defense. This is the 8th best offense and 7th best defense in Minnesota. And they're playing much better, I think, than they were when the Nuggets beat them earlier in the season. So Steve says the Christmas game might be a loss, to be honest. It might be. Look, the Wolves are a really good team, right? That's a coin flip game. That's why you need to beat Utah. I beat Utah and Dallas, and then it's fine if you lose the Wolves, because it's just like that's a coin flip game. That's a really good team that's given you trouble in the past. I do think that there's a little bit of the inconsistency that Minnesota brings to the table. I'm going to be very curious to see the Naz Reid stuff, because if they don't have AG, I just don't know. Honestly, one of the bigger things I'm going to be kind of interested in is, can Spencer Jones defend Naz? I think that's a really good matchup for Spencer. And Naz has killed them. He killed them in the playoffs 2 years ago. He killed them in the regular season last year. Naz is a matchup problem for Denver. And so I think having Spencer Jones in this elevated role could really do some good in terms of slowing down that part of him. Obviously, Julius Randle is a beast too, and Spencer will spend time on him. He's got to stay out of foul trouble. But I do think actually that like having Spencer Jones be able to throw at Naz when Naz plays 4 might be a little bit of a good thing if AG is not back for that game. And I'm not going to expect that AG is back for it. Gnome says, I love Spencer, but he needs to not foul so much. A lot of this, there's 2 big problems that Spencer has with fouling. The first is that when he is containing guys on the perimeter, he is quick. He's got good lateral speed, but the problem is you have to be able to have the speed to keep up with them while not turning your hips toward them. So if a guy drives and you turn to where you are parallel, like a 45 degree to him, and you're turned sideways with your shoulder up against him, if that offensive player leans into you or raises his elbow, that's a foul. If you are completely parallel with your arms wide out and your chest to shoulder with him, and he raises that, as long as you're not impeding his progress, you'll get away with it. That's a foul that Spencer, I think, is still struggling to get through. And the other thing is like trying to figure out what guys get called for what, because sometimes Spencer will guard a guy and he doesn't get a call, and then he guards another guy and he does get that call. That inconsistency is something that you can only really get to by playing. Back to the Wolves. Obviously the defense has been worse without without AG and Christian. Having Christian back would help a lot for some of their perimeter guys. Like McDaniels is having a terrific season, but the Wolves don't really have a point guard. Mike Conley continues to come in off the bench and just like, oh, he won his minutes again. Dante DiVincenzo killed them in their first matchup. That's maybe the guy that you got to keep the most eye on. But if the Denver Nuggets weakness is quick guards that create off the dribble, which it is, that's their big problem, is defending pick and roll scorers. The Wolves don't really have one outside of Ant. They don't have that quick guy that is going to be able to do that. Now, don't get me wrong, Ant's amazing, and Ant's a high volume player. But Ant, I'm pretty sure ISOs more than he runs pick and roll. Like Ant doesn't just like combo and spam pick and roll with Rudy Gobert over and over and over again. He's never done that. That's just not really how he wants to play the game. And honestly, he probably should, because I think he'd probably be in a better situation to do so. But I don't necessarily hate the matchup for Denver versus Ant this season with how they defend and the guys that they have to defend. Like, he'll kill Cam. That's going to happen. He's going to absolutely destroy Cam because Cam's not an elite defender. That's very obvious. And if you're talking and you're like, well, wait, Cam's not a great defender. Why did we trade MPJ if we didn't get a better defender or offensive player back? It's a valid question right now. Cam's supposed to make the entire unit better, and the numbers have been better. I don't know. You can say Cam has been the reason why. Ant is this season. He actually, he is 98th percentile in time in isolation, and he's only 62nd percentile in pick and roll league wide. He does run isolation more than pick and roll. So you're going to see a lot of him just trying to ISO Cam, etc. And yeah, like that's a problem. Denver just doesn't have to double the way they did last year, where they just had to be like, oh, we're going to panic and bring somebody. Now, Ant's going to chase down Jamal on switches. That's going to be the problem, is they're going to do that to him pretty consistently. That's where I think the Adelman will have some tough choices. That's where I think the zone is going to be most effective, is you need to put Ant into a situation where he doesn't have trigger mechanisms to get them into click, click, boom offense. So I think that's pretty tough. People are talking about Bones. I get it. I don't know. I'm still kind of curious on Bones. I'm still a little skeptical as far as Bones being able to be the guy that he has been, honestly, in some of these games even against Denver. I'm a little bit curious about that. So those are kind of things I'm looking at. And then after they face the Wolves, they go on a long, long, long East Coast road trip. They face Minnesota, then they're at Orlando, at Miami, at Toronto, at Cleveland, at Brooklyn, at Philly, at Boston, before being home for Atlanta on January 9th. So that road trip will say a lot, I think, about where they're at and if they're able to fix things, but they should have reinforcements coming. The end result is the Nuggets are a wagon. They are a machine, and they are continuing to chew through this regular season with their eyes on the ultimate prize. Things are on track for where they need to be. It hasn't been perfect. If it was perfect, they'd be peaking too early. Denver's in just the right spot, and I think that's what makes the second half of the season so exciting. We'll talk about more about the Nuggets coming up this week. We'll get you a recap tomorrow night after the Jazz game. We'll get you a recap after the Mavericks game. Swipe will be with you on Monday or Tuesday. I will be around some this week. Got family coming in, got Christmas stuff. We'll definitely have a post-game show on Christmas Eve, or Christmas Day for the Wolves game. We'll have a post-game show for you late that night. Make sure to send Ryan Blackburn best wishes for feeling better. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.